looking through this underlining bill as amended, and one thing that I noticed is that, and I'm just trying to get clarification as to why, but right now you have civilian review boards throughout different cities. And essentially what this bill says is that you essentially citizens are no longer allowed to sit on civilian review boards. You have to be either a current or former peace certified officer. Could you explain why that's in this bill and why that's good policy?
Ms. Cobb?
Mr. Bolding, tell me exactly where in that you're saying that. And I can't remember exactly what that is. And maybe Mr. Kavanaugh could help me with this one. So can you repeat the question for me?
Repeat the question, please, and identify the line.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would I could throw the would Mr. Kavanaugh yield to a question?
Mr. Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Kavanaugh. Similar question. Right now, we know that there's civilian review boards that have been implemented in the city of Phoenix, and we know other municipalities are looking for them. My understanding is that this bill prohibits members of civilian review boards from being actual civilians. Why would that be included in this bill?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Bolding, there are no civilian review boards anywhere in the state of Arizona. Zero, none at all. Traditionally, the review boards have been all police or a limited number of civilians. In fact, in all review boards, that is pretty much the policy of Arizona. If you look at all of our state boards, medical, chiropractic, cosmetology, the rest of them, they all generally have 80% of people from the profession and 20% roughly of civilian membership. And that is the case of all, including Phoenix. So Phoenix does not have a civilian police review board, and they have not even proposed a civilian police review board. What they have proposed is a department of all civilians to investigate police misconduct, which is somewhat bizarre given that every police department in the country, to my knowledge, uses professional, senior trained detectives to investigate police misconduct as part of internal review boards. So that may be what you're confusing it with, but there's no all civilian police review board, so this will not affect that at all.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Kavanaugh, again, you have a way with words without actually answering the question. So with that being said, what this bill does is it prevents civilians from serving on civilian review boards. So whether or not they're currently existing today or in the future.
Mr. Bolding, is that a comment?
There's a question. There's a question coming.
Okay, go.
Got to paint some
Mr.
context.
Kavanaugh, you're taking
I want to make sure that he gets it. So. Okay. What this currently says is that civilian review boards are prohibited from having actual citizens on the board, whether these boards currently exist now or in the future. Why would we prevent civilians from serving on civilian review boards?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Bolding, first, to the answer to your first comment, I'm not sure what part of no you didn't understand in my first answer. But beyond that, there are no civilian review boards for medical doctors, right? We don't take a bunch of people who have no background in medicine and have them judge doctors. There are no all-civilian cosmetology review boards or any profession. The Bar Association does not bring in civilians to judge their attorneys, all right? What they do is, because civilian input is important for transparency, for a different perspective, all of these boards have some civilians on them. The mix is what makes it work, Representative Bolding. And the city of Phoenix wants to purge all law enforcement from a board to investigate police officers. It wants to get rid of the balance. It wants to get rid of the mix and the expertise of the police on the Police Citizen Review Board. And that's what this stops. Because we're not going to throw cops into a pit with a bunch of civilians that are anti-police, because the so-called board or department in Phoenix has a rule that not only must they be all civilians, this is so anti-police. They say if you're a civilian and you have a family member who's a cop, you can't be on the board. That's how anti-police this has become, and I'm protecting cops, and I'm keeping balance on these boards, if that answers your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Kavanaugh, for explaining that that's what this bill is designed to do, is to protect cops and not civilians. And if you still are available to take questions, I certainly have more.
Mr. Kavanaugh?
Mr. Chair, I've only just begun.
No, absolutely. Yes, likewise, sir.
All right, Mr. Boulding, he says he's ready for
Mr.
another.
Chair, Mr. Kavanaugh, in your comments, you mentioned that these different boards, they want a mix of...
We only have a minute and a half, so go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Kavanaugh, you mentioned that on these civilian review boards, whether they are in different professions or not, you want to have a mixture of those professionals and also individuals who are part of the profession. But this bill would not allow for a mix because it only requires individuals who are post-certified or formerly post-certified. So one, where do you get that mix? And since my time is coming up close, the second question comes down to, can you explain that doctors are not paid for by taxpayer dollars, and that might be a reason why they don't have civilian review boards?
Mr. Chairman, President Baldwin, you have totally confused and mixed up this bill. The so-called police training is if a police member, right, if a civilian who was formerly a cop doesn't have to take the training. The AZ Post, there is no requirement that any civilian ever take AZ Post training. They have to take a shorter course so they're familiar with way police operate, and that's already standard now. And I think that's in a different bill. So everything you said is absolutely confused and wrong. And I don't know what, I mean, we should sit down and I can straighten you out on it if you need to.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Kavanaugh, I just want to clarify, if you look at page 3, line 12.
Oh, we're out of time.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I figured, when you're giving inaccurate information, it's clear to look at the time. Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a comment.
Can I? Yeah, we're past the time right now, so you can explain your vote in a moment, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.